I'm going into a secondary school to talk to boys about reading books tomorrow, and this is part of my boys literacy project. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context and a little bit of information about the work we're going to be doing tomorrow and why it's important. So 17.5% of boys have reported reading daily. That's the lowest ever recorded. This has particularly dropped off in 14 to 16-year-old boys and seems to drop off particularly when boys reach secondary school. I think there's all kinds of reasons, but one thing that I do in the program is just a kind of pure role modeling thing. I'm a former pro athlete, a former pro rugby player. I've written a couple of books, so I'm a slightly atypical reading role model for the boys. They see reading and kind of academics more broadly, maybe as slightly feminine coded. Books are largely introduced by women, whether that's the mother in the home or whether that's a primary school teacher who is almost always female. Now, primary school teaching has always been overwhelmingly female, but now secondary school teaching, we're seeing men leave that profession. It used to be about 50-50 male-female, and it's dropped to about 35-65. This in itself is not a bad thing, obviously, but what it means is there are fewer men stood in front of the boys in an educational environment. It's perhaps one of the factors in the decline of literacy amongst young boys and the decline of a reading culture. I think that's really what it is. Everyone can read. We're teaching reading really well, with the phonics, the pronunciation. There's all sorts of ways that people are reading. We're reading captions on short form video. Everyone's like, read the comments, jumping in there. So the actual nuts and bolts of reading seem to be largely okay. It's more that there's this literary culture that is locking people out or that boys are feeling excluded from. And part of the reason that is a problem is that owning and reading books is a huge indicator in your quality of life moving forwards. Also, a lot of children do not own a single book at home. So one of the things I do is bring a load of books down, and you can see one is a sports biography, the other is a work of literature, a modern piece of literature. And with the first group, we're going to talk about heroes, about your role models. I'm going to introduce myself, talk about who my heroes were, who my role models were in sport and in writing. I'm going to ask them who their role models are, who do they look up to? And to be honest, I normally get a Premier League footballer or someone's dad or sports coach or similar. Sport is this massive cultural phenomenon. Premier League football is perhaps the great cultural connector of the modern world. Probably more people globally are into Premier League football than anything else. And being an athlete, being a former athlete, having that sporting connection gives me an instant in and an instant fallback with the boys if things go slightly awry. The other thing is the methodology I use is slightly borrowed from my learnings from sport. I base the sessions slightly on the sessions that I used to experience as a rugby player. I ask them lots of questions. I'm quite confrontational in a polite way. I ask them to back up what they say, but I take them seriously. I take them as a participant in the session. We're there as a team in that room to have the best discussion possible. And the responsibility is on them as much as it is on me to make the use of that time. And I really think they thrive on that responsibility. And that's that methodology I learned from sport. It's infused with the values that I know from sport and that honestly, they know from sport too. The second group, I'm going to give them Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These. We're going to read a little bit out loud together. We're going to talk about the themes of the book, and then they're going to go away and read it. And when I come back for the third and final session, we'll talk about the book in some more detail. What this book does so well is present an alternative model of heroism. This is an everyday man who is walking past wrongdoing in his local town. Bill Furlong, a father of daughters, sees something he knows is wrong in his town in the run up to Christmas, and he has to decide whether he's going to take a risk and do something about it. It gives us an amazing window into a discussion of heroism, what heroism is, modelling some alternative masculinity, modelling some alternative forms of heroism, and crucially, it's short. But what I'm still going to do is give the boys some tips on how to get this reading done. I'm going to break it down in the same way that we might break down a big goal in sport. We're going to have that end goal. We're going to reverse engineer it. We're going to talk about habits, and these are habits that underpin success in sport and in other arenas. And I draw that line for them between something that they aspire to, or at least that they love, and their academic pursuits, their reading. Honestly, some boys will be a bit resistant to this. Some will hate it, some will try and not contribute, and I'll do my damnedest to make sure that doesn't happen, but you can't reach everybody. What the sessions do is they plant the ideas. They say reading is for everyone, including you. Here are some things you can get out of it you may not have considered. This is how it can set you up for future success. Here are some skills you can use in reading or elsewhere, in sport, in whatever you want, to help you get on with that endeavor. But it does work, and we've had some amazing results from the pilot program. So to begin with, A-level English at the school was 0% boys. And after the program, 50% of people who took A-level English were boys. Also, the achievement gap at GCSE, there's a male-female achievement gap, and we addressed that slightly with boys closing the achievement gap. The best performing cohort of boys was the disadvantaged boys, whose improvement outperformed every other group in the school, which is incredibly gratifying. And perhaps most heartwarmingly, loads of the boys reported reading for pleasure. And there was one case in particular where the teacher said, "Do you remember so-and-so? He is now spending 30 minutes every night reading before he goes to sleep." I thought that was just wonderful. I'm really looking forward to going in tomorrow. I'm going to take some books. I'm going to give them to the boys. If you want to know more about any of this stuff, you can go on my Substack, follow along with me on there. That's where I kind of write this sort of thing up. If you're an organisation that's interested in funding this kind of work, then please get in touch. I'm preparing a funding document, a proposal at the moment for any institutions that want to jump on board, and I'd love to do more of this work. So if that's you, or if you work for an organisation that might be interested, then please send me a message and I'll give you as much detail as I can. And if you know a boy who switched off from reading, then encourage them, tell them to follow me, follow other creators who are sharing books online, to pick up a book, read a book yourself, offer to discuss it with them, to lend it to them, take them to the bookshop and let them buy something. This is incredibly important work. Giving a book to a young person is a great gift, and maybe the greatest gift you could possibly give them would be a love of reading. If that's within your power to do that, then please do it. It would be wonderful to see it happen more broadly.